Hey, what's up guys? In the middle of a turbo kit install. As you can see here, I've kind of got my car torn apart, but I'm waiting on parts for that. So what I'm going to do is show you how to delete the air pump on a Honda S2000. So this is your air pump assembly right here, and today I'm going to show you how to delete this. And this is going to be if you have an aftermarket ECU only. This isn't going to work if you have a factory ECU. You'll throw a check engine light. There's ways to get around that. They sell little modules that simulate this thing, but I'm not going to worry about it because I'm going with an aftermarket ECU, and this whole thing's just going to disappear. When I initially started this, I wasn't going to delete the air pump because I kind of like leaving stuff as factory as possible, but after looking at it and seeing what all's involved, it's really not that difficult to do, and it's going to clean up the engine bay a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it, and I'm going to show you guys what I do to delete it. So as you can see here, I've got my valve cover pulled off, or it's actually out for powder coating right now, but that's irrelevant for this purpose. You don't need to mess with your valve cover at all. So what you have here is you have a couple hard lines that run to these soft lines, which run into this hard line assembly here, which in turn runs to more soft lines. And this runs to this box down here, and there's a solenoid down here. So basically what you're going to want to do is just disconnect these hoses from those two things right there. And then you can go ahead and disconnect the hoses from here. So after you remove those soft lines here, in my case, I'm going to remove this whole assembly because I'm bypassing it. I'm going to run an oil catch can to my valve cover. That's a topic for a different day. So you can either remove this, or you can cap off these two lines right here, or you could cap off the two lines up here. Or what I'm going to show you later is you can remove these hard lines, remove this valve back here, and then you can just buy a block off plate. There's a bunch of different ways you could do this, but for now, what I'm going to do is I'm personally going to remove these, and it's going to come off really easy for me because I've already done it. I've just kind of mocked it up so you can actually see what needs to be done. So I'm going to remove this whole assembly here. This was also going to the breather on the valve cover and then feeding into the intake here. But obviously that's going away for mine. You would cap this off and you would be good to go. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this hose off of the intake here. I'm going to pull this off. You would want to cap this plug off if you're staying naturally aspirated. You want to cap that off. That runs down to here, which comes down to this hose down here. So as you can see, I'm removing a couple pretty large hoses. It's going to clean up my engine bay quite a bit. So yeah, I'm going to remove that. Okay, so I've removed my air intake to make things a little bit easier for you guys to see. Just showed you this. This runs down to these two hoses down here in the bottom. Now before I can remove that, there is this bottom hose down here. It has a hose clamp on it. I'm going to have to remove that hose clamp, and that connects to this hard line, this gold line right here, which has, I think, 2 or 3 10mm bolts in it. That actually runs up to this valve in the back of the block up here. That runs up to here with another soft line. So what I'm ultimately going to be doing is taking off this line right here, capping that off. And for now, I'm going to just take this top line off and also cap that off. And I will be taking this line off of the intake manifold and capping that off. So there's 3 capping points for the method that I'm going to be using. And eventually, I'm going to be replacing this whole thing with a block off plate. So there will only be 1 capping point, which will be right here. So yeah, I'm going to remove that bottom line now. Okay, so I have disconnected that bottom hose down there. It was kind of tough to get to, but as you can see, it's disconnected from the golden hose, the hard line down there. It's just a hose clamp. It's not overly challenging, it's just kind of tough to get to. So now, all we have left to do is remove. We've got 4 bolts here. 1, 2, there's another one up in there, 3, and another one right there. You got 4 bolts. These 2 hoses are both free, they'll come right out. And you'll have to disconnect, looks like 2 or 3 electrical connectors, 1, 2, 3. And then you should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and get that taken care of, and I'll show you after it's out. Okay, so what I have here is a 10mm on a pretty long extension. It's just going to make it easier to get in here. So I'm going to remove 4 bolts. now we have it free, and we just need to take off these couple electrical connections. I'm going to separate this from the bracket to make it easier to work with. There's one. Same deal with this one. I'm going to make it easier to work with and take it off the bracket. And there's two. And this one I took off camera earlier when I was messing with the intercooler. So now all you got to do is free up these hoses, and this whole thing should just pull out. The hoses are on these little plastic clips that kind of hold it to the radiator support. Got one of them freed up. So there goes one of them. And there's the air pump assembly. I'm just gonna zip tie these up out of the way eventually for right now. Just tuck them right there for right now, but I'll zip tie them up out of the way eventually. So yeah, now we're done in the bottom part. All right, so we got two 10 millimeters on this hard line down here. You got one here, and you got one back there. That front one's gonna be pretty easy to get to. I'm just gonna take an impact with a swivel on it. Look at that. The next one's a little tougher to get to. I would recommend a 10 millimeter ratcheting wrench. And I'm gonna use this wrench for leverage. It's probably not good on your tools, but don't worry about that later. Basically, you just interlock them like this, and now I can pull on it and I get more leverage. Okay, so I'm on the bolt. It's a tough spot to get to. Get one click on my ratcheting wrench, and there it goes. That looks like there is a little clip that the radiator hose ties into. It's on this hard line, so you're going to take that off as well. All right, there's the other one. Now this whole thing is free. Now all you have to do is disconnect the hose from the golden hard line. There's the hose clamp. Just disconnect those two things, and then you're basically freed up all the way up to this diverter valve up here. Okay, so the hose is actually pretty hard to get to down there. It pops up right here on this diverter valve, so it's going to be a lot easier to just pull the hose off right here and then pull the whole golden hard line assembly off with this hose still attached to it through the bottom. There you go. Now that should free everything up. There is one little plastic connection down here that kind of just secures this hose in place. So once you free it up off of that, you'll be good to go. It is freed up, so I'm going to remove the whole assembly out from the bottom of the engine bay. Well, maybe not the bottom of the engine bay, but I'm going to remove it all from down here. Should make everything quite a bit easier. Okay, well this is easier said than done, because this piece is, it's loose, it's completely free right now. It's just wedged between all kinds of crap. Top of the steering rack seems to be what's holding it in place right here, so I think I'm actually gonna have to pull it that way. Now the AC lines are in the way. Moral of the story is this is just kind of a tight fit. You're just gonna have to work it out the best you can. Try not to mess anything up as you're pulling this out. There's a lot of sensitive components up here. So there you go. Got the hard line out. Still with this hose attached to it. Okay, so now I'm going to remove this box right here, and I'm going to remove the solenoid that used to be attached to the stock air box. That's just as simple as taking off this connector and unplugging the hoses from it, and you'll pull that out. This has a couple hoses plugged into it. You'll just pop those off, and it has, looks like one 10 millimeter screw, and it'll pop right out. All right, and that pops off the solenoid and accumulator box type deal. I'll set that off to the side. I'll tuck these wires out of the way. I'll probably just zip tie them up. Okay, so to wrap up this air pump delete, I picked up some 1/8 inch rubber vacuum caps. I'm gonna cap off this right here and this right here, the intake manifold right here, and this diverter valve, the top portion of it. The only reason I'm leaving this diverter valve for now instead of putting a block off plate on it is because I'm making a lot of changes on the car, and right now this is known to not be a problem, and I would rather keep my variables to a minimum. As far as, you know, I've got the turbo kit going on, I've got a new computer going in, I've got new injectors, spark plugs, you know, there's gonna be a lot of variables here. I don't want this to be one of them. So after I get everything dialed in, I will block this off, and I'll do that in a future video. But for now, I'm gonna cap off these 2 ports. That one's already capped. I actually went to put this large cap on here, and I was gonna take it off to show it on video, and I could not. I mean, I could probably get it off there if I really tried, but it's on there good. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get these capped. Okay, so that wraps up the air pump delete that we've been doing today. That is basically all there is to it. Like I said, I wasn't planning on doing this. Well, the main thing that made me want to do it was running the intercooler piping over here was going to be a pain with the air pump still there. So that was the main reason. A side reason is I was able to get rid of a lot of hoses, a lot of just clutter in the engine bay. It's going to look a lot nicer that way, and it honestly wasn't that hard to do, so it won't be hard to redo if I ever need to. So yeah, that's basically all I have for today. So yeah, thanks for watching.